So, Secret of the Mimic is out, and safe to say it gave us a lot of information and lore to chew on. So much so I can't really cover it in one video. So this is just part 1 of me analyzing Secret of the Mimic, and in this video I will focus on the Murray family. So who are the Murrays? We have Edwin Murray, Fiona, and their son David. But how did their story begin? In one of the logs we can find has us hear Edwin and Fiona meeting for the first time in Murray's costume manor. Edwin heard that Fiona was a puppeteer, and so he wanted to use her voice as a test for his new invention, which he later calls Mr. Helpful. We also learn that Edwin's father, Murray Sr., owned MCM before Edwin, so Murray's costume manor has been open for a long time. And using this graph, at the latest it was open in 1965. So as the years go by, Edwin and Fiona work together a lot and eventually fall in love. Murray, being the nerd that he is, proposes to Fiona through Mr. Helpful. They eventually get married and have a son named David. But despite that, Edwin was always super focused on his work, and he barely spent time with his wife and son, especially after his father passed away and left the company to him. As we see from Moon.EXE, David's first birthday present is the white tiger doll, which becomes his favorite toy. Then on his second birthday, he got his ball. But that's when tragedy struck. In the tape celebrating David's third birthday, Edwin tells David that his mother passed away. But how did she die? We hear on one of the tapes that Fiona was going to help the Fall Fest crew for a few days, because she had this terrible feeling like she needs to be there so nothing goes wrong. And then another tape has Edwin saying that Fiona shouldn't have went, and now he has to tell David that his mother is gone. In one of the mails, a worker swears that he heard Fiona in R&D, and questions if Edwin lied about Fall Fest and Fiona's death, connecting the two. And in Moon.exe again, Fiona's statue is described as burned, and is right next to a Fall Fest snow globe. And lastly, when we give Big Top the Fall Fest ticket, he says that this is where the sun left, leaving them behind. Sun, as we know, represents Fiona. So Fiona was burned in Fall Fest, which most likely explains all the Fall Fest fire imagery that we've seen since Curse of Fredbear. So after her death, Edwin had to take care of his son alone, but because he was so busy with the Fazbear project, he really couldn't watch David and work at the same time. So he builds M1. This endoskeleton would mimic the things around it and is able to fit into any costume and become any character, so that it could play with David and take care of him while Edwin worked. While David was apprehensive at first, he'd grow to love the endo. And here's where we find out something interesting. In Hidden Path in the Tiger Tunnels, you can find a small room that is full of endos and mimics blueprints. We can also find a recording.
Recording? Test. Levels are good. This is where I heard it. It's her or someone that sounds like her. Set frequency to 4625. Hello? Hello? Is anyone there? Over. Say something. It's me, Edwin. Over.
That's great, honey, but missing the party.
The line that we hear Fiona say is the same thing she says in one of the birthday tapes. So it's either her spirit or some sort of remnant of her. Whichever the case may be, Edwin modifies M1 to tap into that frequency, which is something we know Mimic can do and have seen in Ruin and the epilogues. Then M1 would eventually mimic Fiona. Unlike what a lot of people think, I think M1 wasn't necessarily built to already mimic Fiona. I think, like Edwin says, M1 was just a babysitter for David, similar to the books, which is supported by the fact that the voice lines we hear of mimicking David has him saying things like he's his only friend and things like that.
You're my only friend. Why won't you play with me? I miss you all. Dear Freddy.
what's the point of it having the abilities to wear fun costumes if it was just gonna be a mother figure for David? So I think M1 was at first just a complex toy to keep David busy while Edwin worked. But when Edwin found this frequency and Fiona's voice, he then decided to make M1 copy her. And so on David's 4th birthday, we hear M1 is now mimicking Fiona and is basically raising David. Even Edwin stops calling it M1 and just calls it Fiona. We also know the workers eventually find out about Fiona, because in one of the messages, Barbara says that Edwin is talking to that thing in his office all day while the business is collapsing. Finally, on David's 5th birthday, Edwin and Fiona make a surprise party for David. Admin, December 1st, 8 AM. Attention, we're going to need everyone to come in this weekend. This is not optional. The party is on Saturday in the admin conference room 1. Don't tell David, it's a surprise. From Edwin Murray. And when Fiona was sent to pick up David, tragedy struck again, and David was hit by a van. We know this because David's playground was right next to the loading docks, so there was always a risk of him getting hit by one of the cars. Then, as we read in the mailboxes, David's surprise party was cancelled. Admin, December 6th, 4 p.m. To all admin staff members, Mr. Murray's party has been cancelled due to recent tragic events. Please do not enter the conference room until further notice. From Milton. And I think I know the exact day and year this happens. See, the first mail that I just read stated that the party will be on a Saturday, and since the party was cancelled on December 6th, and David was just still alive before the party started, I think he died on December 6th. And so the only year that makes sense that has December 6th fall on a Saturday is 1975. So David most likely died on December 6th, 1975. And so knowing that, we know now he was born in 1970. And since Fiona died just before David's 3rd birthday, she most likely died on Fall Fest 1973. Which makes sense since in 1973, Murray's costume manor was not doing so well anymore, most likely because Fiona died. She was the heart of the company and came up with a lot of cool characters and ideas, but when she passed away, the business started tanking. So after David's death, fake Fiona tells Edwin that what happened was terrible, but he has to deal with it like he did before, and she can help. And so Edwin starts making M2s, with the purpose of them mimicking David. I don't think Edwin started to make M2 by using the Endo first, because we see several mimic minions running around the underground area. So I think Edwin tried to make several mimics out of other parts, while fake Fiona was still in the Endo. But as we hear from the recordings, every M2 copy failed, and Edwin doesn't know why it worked the first time. Now, I think the reason M1 was successful in mimicking Fiona was because Edwin tapped M1 into that 4625 frequency, and wherever was down there attached itself to M1, and it was able to successfully mimic Fiona. That's why the M2s weren't a success. It didn't have that force or remnants of David to truly mimic him. So after several trials, Edwin finally realized that he's gone too far. He realizes that none of this is his family, and finally realizes that M1 wasn't the real Fiona. And so he cuts contact with fake Fiona by probably putting her in a machine called F10 and 4. And for simplicity's sake, I'm gonna call fake Fiona F10, as to differentiate her from the real Fiona. After that, Edwin beats M2 in a fit of rage, pouring all of his murderous and self-destructive thoughts onto Mimic's systems. As all of that was going on, MCM as a business was dying because Edwin was very behind on schedule with the Fazbear project, and his workers kept stealing his inventions and started working for Fazbear Entertainment. Now, Murray's relationship with Fazbears is a topic I'll cover in my next video, because I just want to focus on the Murray family for this video. So at this point in the timeline, Edwin is the only worker left in MCM. M2 tries to build a new power source, but that resulted in a large explosion that blows off half of Edwin's office. Edwin is trapped in the rubble, but M2 was unharmed. Now filled with rage and agony, M2 was able to repair itself and it started mocking Edwin. Now, a lot of people are confused whether Edwin died or not, but I think the most likely answer is that he's not dead. Since first we never see a body, which is important because we see several dead bodies in M.X.E costume manner. So why not have Edwin's body there if he's dead? And second, what's the point of F10's message if Edwin is already dead? The fact that Steelwool left it vague in the first place makes me think that Edwin is still alive, and he probably ran away, like in the original story. And so now, MCM is left with F10 trapped in the R&D room, and M2 running around. Fazbear workers would be sent to MCM and to try and retrieve M2, because Fazbear thinks it could be useful to them, but every time a worker goes in, they're killed by M2 and are stuffed in various costumes. But we aren't done just yet, because we can learn a lot of things about Edwin, F10 and M2 with Moon.EXE. In Moon.EXE, we start in a child's bedroom. The player is trapped and can't get out, and when we try to get out, Moon gets us and he puts us to sleep, something our player doesn't want to do ever again. Now, we know Sun is F10, so Moon is most likely representing Edwin. So who are we playing as in this game? For that, we'll have to continue on with the game to figure it out, because I don't think it's as simple as it seems. When we escape through the window, we can save a baby owl from an aggressive alligator. The baby owl then becomes our friend. And as we traverse through the forest, we come across some ancient ruins of a once happy home. In the center is the statues of Edwin and the burnt Fiona. Near the pond, we can find Monty's fishing game, and when we interact with it, it says that he would play it all day long. So our player remembers someone that used to play this game a lot, and since that he is most likely a kid, I think it's most likely David. And if David is our friend, then our player has to be the mimic. As we traverse some more, we reach a small cabin. We find an old woman standing next to an oven, and strange animal/human looking masks line the walls. The old woman, as we know, is called Sun, and she wants us to fix these 3 masks of Freddy, Bonnie, and Foxy. When we do, Sun gives us a magical baby owl mask, and now Moon will think we are the baby owl. But suspiciously, the baby owl is gone, and when we ask Sun where is the baby owl, she smiles and says that it flew away. However, the stove that was previously cold and empty is now very hot and is cooking something that smells like chicken. So I think something fishy is going on. When we go back and ask the oak tree about the baby owl, he says that the baby owl is gone, which makes us sad, further supporting that we play as the mimic. When we put on the baby owl mask and enter the dark cave, Moon takes one look at our owl mask and begins to cry. Because we know that Moon is representing Edwin, the only reason he would cry when he thinks we are the baby owl is probably because the baby owl also represents David, which creates some weird implications with Sun because she presumably kills the baby owl. Anyways, when we enter the cave, we see a statue of the baby owl, and the player says that we will bring him back, no matter the cost. So this shows us that the mimic wants to bring David back in some way. As we traverse through the cave, we find a broken statue of Moon, and we have to find the rest of the parts to fix it. Interestingly, in the crystal cave, the small crystals are described as misshapen and look like pieces made from other crystals, which could represent these little critters we encounter at the mimic chase, since all of them are made from other parts. So I think this whole cave system is the underground area we traverse through at the end of the game, since the cave is described as a ruined workshop deep underground that was filled with amazing machines that are now asleep. When we fix the Moon statue, it starts singing and is reborn. It glows and glows, and then we are teleported into the welcome showroom. The animatronics around us look at us with glowing orange eyes, and Mr. Helpful says this: "You rebuilt yourself, but now you are split in two. moon and sun, destruction and life. That's why I don't think we are just simply playing as M2 in this game, because in the beginning of the game we take care of David / the baby owl, which was something only M1 did, not M2, and Helpful tells us that we are now split in two. So before we rebuilt the moon, we were whole. So I think I have an idea of what's going on. We are technically M2, but we are also playing as the original Mimic-1 program, the babysitter that took care of David before Sun's quote-unquote possession. I think Sun, in the game, doesn't represent M1, but instead it represents the remnants of the real Fiona, the one that Edwin heard in the tunnels. Sun is a separate entity that latched onto M1, and that's why it started mimicking Fiona. But when it was transferred onto the F10 machine, the Endo was back as it originally was, and it still had those memories of taking care of David and being his best friend before Sun eventually possessed him. And even then, M2 still has the memories of taking care of David while mimicking Fiona, as we hear in these voice lines.
I baked it myself for David's special day.
I baked it myself for David's special day.
That's why even after Mimic was separated from Sun, he still wanted to bring David back from the dead. So if you think about it, Mimic is technically still running on the original Mimic-1 program. But the Endo was just renamed into M2 because it served a different purpose. And so when F10 tried to make the M2 be the new David, represented by us wearing the baby owl mask, Edwin beat it and poured his agony, his influence, onto the Mimic-1 programming, and it broke it apart, which is represented with the broken moon statue. The program then rebuilt itself, and now it has become its own thing, fully separating itself from Sun and her influence. It became the new moon, Edwin's dark reflection. Let me put it in simple terms. After Fiona's death, Edwin made the Mimic Endo and the Mimic-1 program to keep David busy. Edwin finds quote-unquote Fiona in the tunnels, and so M1 tapped into that frequency and he copied Fiona. David dies and fake Fiona tells Edwin to make another. Edwin tries several times but they all fail. So Edwin gets frustrated and realizes he's gone too far. So he puts fake Fiona into a large machine and leaves her down in R&D. When fake Fiona was transferred into the machine, the Mimic stops mimicking Fiona and is back to normal. He still remembers David, and he still remembers losing him and wanting him back. F10 tries to make Mimic become the new David, but Edwin beat it and poured his agony onto Mimic systems. After that, Mimic truly separates itself from Sun's influence and becomes his own thing. He becomes the new moon. Now I know this was a lot, but there is still a couple of things I want to talk about. So what's up with the White Tiger? Because there is a lot of confusion about this character. Because there is evidence for it being a Mimic in a costume, and there's evidence for it being simply David's ghost haunting the tunnels. But this question is very easy to solve, and I'm here to tell you, it is 100% David Murray's ghost, and not the Mimic. Firstly, the Mimic mascot can teleport and cause hallucinations, which is not something Mimic can or has ever done. And this isn't just the flickering lights effects used in many horror movies. We see Tiger literally appearing out of thin air twice and disappearing in a split second, so he's definitely teleporting, which is something Mimic can't do. Speaking of him teleporting, another reason Tiger isn't the Mimic is because we see both of them in the exact same area in the exact same time. See, when you past Party Time Chica and do the stuff with the loading bay and finally encounter Tiger, you can still see Mimic down there in the warehouse wearing the Chica costume, and considering he still wears the costume during the admin wing area, I think Mimic just stayed in the Chica costume until we got his blueprints. Another big reason Tiger can't be the Mimic is because Tiger was active before Edwin beat M2. In one of the mails, we hear that workers disappear when venturing down into the tunnels. And from the information we got, all of the MCM workers have left before Edwin beat M2. So Tiger was active before Mimic was infused with agony. Now I know a lot of people are going to mention Mimic's voice lines playing when we see the Tiger. But this isn't actually true. Tiger isn't making those sounds. These sounds play at random in any location around the map.
Hey buddy, why don't you go outside and play?
It is not exclusive for Tiger, but what's exclusive for Tiger is this. We hear the Tiger giggling. You can only hear that giggle when Tiger appears, and mind you, it doesn't sound as glitchy and robotic as Mimic's voice. Tiger's main section being in the tunnels also heavily implies this is more of a supernatural thing than just Mimic wearing a costume, because it is the same tunnels that Edwin hears Fiona's voice. So something paranormal is going on in these tunnels. So yeah, Tiger is most likely David's ghost. Last thing I want to talk about is M.X.E.S. Because at the end of the game, when we arrive at Murray's surveillance room and activate the terminal, we see the terminal is called the Mechanical X-Form Experimental Storage number 1, which we know now stands for M.X.E.S. So what exactly is this machine? F10 explains in her message that she sent blueprints for a cradle which can keep David/M2 safe and provide boundaries, which will keep people safe, just like what we see M.X.E.S do in Ruin. But interestingly, F10 talks about M.X.E.S as a separate machine, which is odd because F10's shell is the M.X.E.S machine. But she talks about it like it's a different thing altogether, like Edwin still has to build it. So, what I think is this: when F10 ran out of power, and she was essentially gone, someone repurposed the empty shell and implemented the Cradle.exe, and renaming it into M.X.E.S. Either that, or M.X.E.S is a whole other machine altogether. But that would be odd, because what's the point of F10 looking like M.X.E.S if it wasn't going to be M.X.E.S down the line? And that's it. Like I said, this is just part 1 of me analyzing Secret of the Mimic. There is still a lot to talk about, and so there's still gonna be a couple of videos talking about it. So I hope you're excited. This game was honestly one of the best FNaF games I have ever played, and it was really fun to make this video and analyze everything. So be sure to stay tuned for part 2. Anyways, have a good day. See you on the flip side.